The cabin lights flickered for a brief second, and the gentle hum of the engines was the only sound that filled the aircraft. Passengers were either dozing lightly, engrossed in their screens, or staring out the window at the vast blanket of clouds below. It was a routine flight, Flight 409, heading from New York to Los Angeles, a distance of over 2,400 miles. But in a matter of moments, what had begun as a routine journey would turn into a nightmare that no one on board would ever forget. Emma Thompson, a 21-year-old college student, had boarded the flight that morning with the usual mix of excitement and mild nervousness. It was her first solo cross-country trip, her parents waving at her with forced smiles at the gate, masking their worry. She had meticulously packed her bag, triple-checked her boarding pass, and even practiced calming breathing exercises she had learned from her yoga instructor. But nothing could have prepared her for the ordeal that awaited at 39,000 feet. The flight took off smoothly. The captain, a seasoned pilot with over 15 years of experience, gave the customary welcome announcement, his voice calm, steady, and reassuring. The first hour passed uneventfully, drinks were served, screens flickered with movies, and the soft murmur of passengers filled the cabin. Emma had a window seat, and she found herself mesmerized by the landscape below, a patchwork quilt of cities, rivers, and mountains. It was serene, almost poetic, a stark contrast to what would soon unfold. Approximately 3 hours into the flight, cruising steadily at 39,000 feet, the unexpected happened. A sudden, unnatural shudder ran through the plane. A low alarm beeped faintly in the cockpit, a sound most passengers wouldn't have even noticed. But for the crew, it was a warning. The captain's voice came over the intercom, clipped and professional, as he reassured passengers that everything was fine. Yet, behind the polished tone, the first hints of trouble had begun to surface. In the cockpit, the captain's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Emma, sitting in her seat 2 rows behind the first-class cabin, noticed the flight attendants exchanging subtle glances. Something was wrong. The captain, a man who had always appeared unshakable, suddenly gripped the sides of his seat, his knuckles white. Then came the unthinkable. The cabin lurched violently, the plane tilting unexpectedly. Passengers screamed as overhead compartments rattled. The captain's voice came over the intercom again, but this time it was weak, faltering, and interrupted mid-sentence by a strange silence. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Flight attendants ran to the cockpit, calling out to the captain, but their attempts were met with silence. Emma, though terrified, noticed the chaos around her. The seasoned flight attendants, trained for emergencies, were suddenly unsure of what to do. The co-pilot was nowhere in sight. The airline's safety protocol had the first officer seated on long-haul flights, but for some reason, he was absent. The realization hit everyone like a thunderclap: the captain had collapsed. Panic surged through the cabin. Some passengers cried out, others prayed silently, clutching their hands together. Emma's instincts, honed through years of disciplined study and self-reliance, kicked in. Her mind raced. She had watched countless videos of aviation procedures, read manuals, and even attended a flight simulator workshop at her university for fun. Could she actually do something? She took a deep breath, trying to push back the rising terror in her chest. Flight attendants were shouting for someone to help. Emma rose from her seat, her heart pounding, her palms sweaty. I can help," she stammered, her voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos. The head flight attendant, a woman in her 40s with a face etched in worry lines, turned toward her with a mixture of skepticism and desperation. You can't," she began, but Emma interrupted, her voice firmer now. "I've studied this. I know the basics. Please, I can try." The flight attendants glanced at each other, weighing the absurdity against the urgent reality. The captain was unconscious. The co-pilot was absent. At 39,000 feet, with over 400 lives in their hands, they had no choice. Emma was led into the cockpit. The instruments, blinking and beeping in a symphony of warning lights, were intimidating. The yoke felt heavy under her hands. Her eyes darted to the autopilot system, the radio, the emergency procedures manual taped to the side. She could hear the passengers screaming behind the cockpit door, the plane shaking slightly as turbulence buffeted it. She forced herself to focus. She remembered the first lesson from her simulator training: stay calm. Assess. Communicate. She reached for the radio, her voice trembling but clear. Mayday! Mayday! This is Flight 409. The captain is unconscious. I am a passenger, but I have some flight training. Requesting immediate guidance. Static crackled, and then a voice came through, urgent and professional. Flight 409, this is air traffic control. Do you copy? Emma's hands shook. Yes, yes. Captain is unconscious. I can try to fly the plane. I need instructions. The controller's voice, calm and commanding, began to guide her through basic maneuvers. Step by step, she adjusted the throttle, kept the plane level, and stabilized the descent. Every command was a test of her courage and skill. Minutes felt like hours. Outside, the clouds streaked by, the horizon tilting dangerously with every turbulence strike. Emma's training, intuition, and sheer willpower were the only things keeping the aircraft from plummeting. She adjusted the flaps, monitored altitude, and kept communication open with air traffic control. In the cabin, the tension was unbearable. Passengers clung to their seats, tears streaming down their faces, some praying aloud. Flight attendants circulated, offering what comfort they could, whispering words of encouragement. She's doing it. She's keeping us safe. Emma's thoughts raced. She remembered a video she had watched about emergency landings. Focus on the runway. Trust the instruments. Control your fear. She repeated the mantra in her mind, over and over, as the plane slowly descended toward Los Angeles. Suddenly, another crisis hit. The landing gear indicator showed a malfunction. Panic threatened to overwhelm her again, but she took a deep breath. Recalling her simulator exercises, she toggled the override, followed the checklist meticulously, and cross-checked every instrument. She could hear the ground crew now, responding to her updates, preparing the emergency protocols at the airport. Fire trucks, ambulances, and emergency personnel were on standby. Emma's resolve hardened. She would not fail, not now, not ever. The plane was lower now, the runway visible through the cockpit window. Emma's hands, trembling but precise, guided the yoke, corrected for crosswinds, and followed the instructions from the ground control. The passengers braced themselves, gripping armrests, holding hands, and praying. Emma adjusted the throttle, lining up the plane perfectly. She could feel the landing gear locking into place, hear the familiar thrum of the engine slowing. The runway rushed closer, and with a final, steady pull of the yoke, the plane touched down. Tires screamed against asphalt, but the aircraft remained stable. Cheers erupted in the cabin, tears and laughter mingling as passengers realized they were alive. Emma, panting, hands shaking, slumped into her seat. Flight attendants rushed to her side, tears streaming down their faces. The captain was attended to by paramedics, slowly regaining consciousness. The realization of what had occurred spread through the plane like wildfire. A 21-year-old passenger had saved them all. And yet, as the plane taxied to the gate, Emma knew that this was just the beginning. The media storm, the investigation, and the disbelief that awaited outside the airport doors were unimaginable. But in that cockpit, at that moment, she had done the impossible. The story of Flight 409, of the young woman who took control at 39,000 feet, was about to shock the world. The moment Ayan Malik's hands gripped the yoke of Flight AQR 781, the world seemed to narrow to the cockpit and the endless expanse of sky outside. Every red alarm light, every fluctuating instrument, every minor warning tone now demanded his attention. The plane carried 408 souls, unaware that their survival now rested in the hands of a 14-year-old boy with extraordinary calm under unimaginable pressure. Inside the cockpit, the hum of machinery was almost deafening. The once bright screens blinked erratically, warning of minor engine inconsistencies and fluctuating altitude. Ayan's training on simulators had never fully prepared him for this. Here, the stakes were real. No reset button, no pause, no retries, every decision had immediate consequences. Ground control maintained a calm presence over the radio, providing detailed step-by-step instructions. Ayan, you've stabilized the plane. Now maintain your heading. Adjust throttle incrementally. Monitor airspeed and engine performance. Ayan nodded, barely audible, and adjusted the throttle. The plane hummed as it responded to his delicate input. He scanned the instruments: altitude, speed, fuel reserves, wind currents. Each reading was a tiny piece of the puzzle he had to solve instantly. The cabin behind him was tense. Passengers whispered prayers. Children clutched their parents' hands. Flight attendants kept a careful balance of calm and reassurance. Though they could not see Aeon, they sensed the fragile thread on which their lives now hung. Hours seemed like minutes. Aeon focused entirely on maintaining stability. Turbulence rattled the plane. Lightning flashed faintly in distant clouds, casting eerie shadows on the cockpit walls. His small hands moved decisively, manipulating flaps, throttle, and rudder. Each adjustment required precision. Overcorrecting could be catastrophic. "Good job, Aeon," ground control said. "You're handling this remarkably well. Now prepare for the next phase, descent. We will guide you to Karachi for landing. Watch wind speeds and adjust approach accordingly." The words settled on Aeon like both encouragement and pressure. Descending a commercial airliner was difficult even for trained pilots. For him, it was nearly unimaginable. Yet fear did not dominate his mind. Instead, focus, calculation, and intuition guided him. He studied the radar and weather patterns. Karachi Airport lay hundreds of miles ahead, the only safe haven. He adjusted speed and altitude, carefully monitoring the engines. The plane's descent had to be slow enough to avoid stress on the fuselage yet fast enough to reach the runway before fuel depletion or unpredictable weather interfered. The passengers, sensing something different, began to notice subtle stability. The once jarring turbulence seemed to ease slightly. Murmurs of hope spread through the cabin. Flight attendants encouraged quiet reassurance. Everyone understood that a miracle was unfolding above the clouds. Ground control continued precise instructions. Lower landing gear. Stage 1 flaps. Prepare for final approach. Maintain centerline alignment with the runway. Adjust throttle as necessary. Aeon's fingers danced across levers and switches, his mind calculating angles, speeds, wind, and altitude adjustments simultaneously. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his heart raced, but his movements were steady, controlled. The autopilot assisted with minor corrections, but the bulk of decision-making was his. The plane passed over distant mountains, valleys, and cities that seemed unaware of the drama unfolding above them. Clouds parted in soft shafts of sunlight, illuminating Aeon's determined face. He whispered to himself, "I can do this. I must do this." Turbulence increased as the aircraft neared Karachi. Gusts of wind rocked the fuselage violently. Alarms flared again. Passengers screamed, clutching loved ones. Aeon adjusted the rudder and flaps simultaneously, correcting the tilt and stabilizing the descent. Every second counted. Every micro-adjustment mattered. Ground control's voice cut through the chaos, "Maintain focus. We are guiding you. Deploy flaps fully at 20 miles out. Begin lowering landing gear now. Keep wings level. Watch speed carefully." Aeon obeyed with meticulous care. The landing gear extended with a resonant metallic click. Flaps fully deployed, shifting the aerodynamics. The plane responded as intended, but every jolt and shudder reminded him of the enormity of his task. Below, emergency crews prepared the runway. Fire trucks, ambulances, rescue personnel lined the tarmac, lights flashing in synchronized patterns. They had been alerted hours ago, ready for the miraculous, yet terrifying, arrival. Aeon guided the plane with precision, calculating angles, wind gusts, and velocity adjustments in real time. He flared the aircraft gently at the correct altitude, feeling the nose lift as the wheels approached the tarmac. The massive plane touched down, once, twice, before stabilizing. Reverse thrust engaged, brakes slowed the aircraft, and finally, Flight AQR 781 came to a full, safe stop. Inside, the cabin erupted with cries of relief, sobs of gratitude, and cheers. Mothers clutched children tightly, strangers hugged, and even elderly passengers wept quietly. Aeon leaned back in the captain's seat, trembling but aware of the lives he had saved. 408 souls had survived due to the courage and skill of a 14-year-old boy. Paramedics rushed to the pilots, who were stabilized and transported to the hospital. Doctors later confirmed that without Aeon's intervention, the plane would have crashed, resulting in catastrophic loss of life. Airlines and aviation authorities lauded his bravery, and news outlets across the globe broadcasted the miraculous story. A teenager had landed a commercial aircraft safely, saving hundreds of lives. In the days following, Aeon's life changed. The world celebrated him as a hero. Interviews, awards, and honors followed. Yet he remained humble, always crediting his training, focus, and calmness under pressure. "I only did what had to be done," he would say. Fear is a luxury you cannot afford when lives depend on you. Aeon's story became a case study in aviation schools worldwide, demonstrating that courage, quick thinking, and determination could surpass age and experience. Pilots, trainees, and even seasoned experts marveled at the poise and calm of someone so young facing unimaginable stakes. Over time, Aeon pursued his lifelong dream, becoming a professional pilot. Yet he never forgot that day, when the sky held its breath and entrusted a child with a responsibility far beyond his years. He became a symbol of hope, inspiration, and the extraordinary power of courage. The world would forever remember the day a boy, just 14 years old, landed a massive commercial aircraft and saved 408 lives. The sun had climbed higher over the desert as Flight AQR 781 soared above the clouds, carrying 408 passengers whose lives now depended entirely on a 14-year-old boy, Aeon Malik. The world outside was tranquil, painted in soft golds and blues, completely unaware of the extraordinary drama unfolding hundreds of feet above the earth. Inside the cockpit, a symphony of alarms, blinking lights, and the constant hum of engines filled the space, while Aeon's small hands gripped the yoke with a mix of determination and fear. Every second demanded absolute precision. Aeon's mind raced through countless simulator scenarios, calculations, and procedures he had memorized over years of obsession with aviation. He checked instruments obsessively: altitude, speed, wind conditions, fuel levels, engine performance. Each indicator required rapid assessment, and any mistake could cost hundreds of lives. The autopilot assisted, but minor corrections, especially during turbulence, required his direct attention. Below him, passengers were unaware of the true scale of their peril. Some slept fitfully, unaware that without this boy's extraordinary composure, the aircraft would have already crashed. Mothers hugged children tighter, whispering prayers under their breath. Flight attendants, trained for emergencies, watched the young pilot with tense hope, guiding passengers as best they could while silently acknowledging that the boy's hands now held the power of life and death. Aeon's focus never wavered. Turbulence rocked the aircraft violently as they approached a weather front. Lightning flashed in distant clouds, illuminating his concentrated face. Sweat dripped down his forehead, but he did not falter. Every adjustment had to be small, precise. Overcorrecting could have catastrophic consequences. Maintain heading and altitude, ground control instructed. You're doing remarkably well, Aeon. Prepare for the descent phase. Karachi Airport is ready for your approach. Follow instructions exactly. The words were both comforting and pressuring. Descending a large passenger jet was challenging even for experienced pilots. For a 14-year-old boy, it was nearly unimaginable. But fear had no place in his mind. Calm, calculation, and instinct guided him. He studied the radar and weather patterns. Karachi Airport, hundreds of miles away, was the only safe landing site. Gusts of wind buffeted the aircraft as they neared the city. The plane swayed slightly, but Aeon countered with meticulous adjustments of throttle, rudder, and flaps. Each movement was critical. Each micro-decision mattered. Meanwhile, in the cabin, tension mounted. Whispers of prayers, anxious glances, and tight grips on armrests filled the space. Children clutched parents, strangers held hands. The entire aircraft seemed united in hope and silent trust in the boy at the controls. Ground control continued. Lower landing gear. Stage 1 flaps. Align with the runway centerline. Monitor speed carefully. We are with you, step by step. Aeon complied flawlessly. The landing gear extended with a metallic click, and the plane's weight shifted subtly. Flaps fully deployed, adjusting the aerodynamics. He monitored speed and wind, correcting minor deviations with micro-adjustments. Turbulence still threatened, but the aircraft remained stable under his command. As they approached the runway, the sun reflected off the tarmac below, casting a narrow golden path through the clouds. Emergency crews, alerted hours before, had mobilized in precise formation. Fire trucks, ambulances, and personnel lined the runway, lights flashing and ready for the miraculous arrival. Prepare for final approach, ground control instructed. Reduce throttle, begin flare at 20 feet, keep wings level. And maintain heading. You are doing brilliantly. Aeon's palms were sweaty, but his movements were exact. He reduced throttle, eased the nose upward slightly, and began the flare. The plane touched down, once, then bounced lightly, before the main wheels settled firmly on the tarmac. Reverse thrust engaged, brakes applied. Slowly, agonizingly, the aircraft came to a full stop. Inside, the cabin erupted with emotion. Cries of relief, laughter, prayers, and sobs mingled together. Mothers embraced children tightly. Strangers hugged each other. Elderly passengers whispered thanks to God. Flight attendants wept quietly, realizing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Aeon leaned back, exhausted yet composed, overwhelmed by the enormity of his achievement. 408 lives had been saved. Paramedics immediately attended to the unconscious pilots, stabilizing them before transporting them to the hospital. Doctors later confirmed that without Aeon's skill and composure, the outcome would have been catastrophic. Airlines, aviation authorities, and media outlets hailed him as a hero. News of the miraculous landing spread globally. A 14-year-old had successfully landed a commercial aircraft, saving hundreds of lives. Yet even amidst the global accolades, Aeon remained humble. I just did what had to be done, he said. When lives are at stake, fear is not an option. You act, and hope for the best. The story inspired countless people worldwide. Aviation schools used it as a case study. Pilots, instructors, and trainees marveled at the poise of someone so young facing such overwhelming responsibility. His courage, determination, and quick thinking were held as an example of extraordinary human capability. Over the following years, Aeon pursued his dream of becoming a professional pilot. He never forgot that day, the day the sky held its breath, entrusting a child with the lives of hundreds. That day became a symbol of courage, hope, and the extraordinary potential within humanity. Families of the passengers sent letters of gratitude. Airlines honored him with awards. Governments recognized him for his bravery. Yet for Aeon, the true reward was knowing he had acted when it mattered most, when the impossible became possible because fear did not dominate, and courage took the helm. The world would forever remember the day a 14-year-old boy took control of a commercial aircraft, faced the unthinkable, and landed it safely, saving 408 lives. The story continued to inspire millions, teaching lessons of composure, precision, bravery, and hope. Even as he grew older and achieved personal success, Aon always remembered the plane, the passengers, and the fleeting moment when an ordinary boy became a hero against all odds. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and crimson as Flight AQR 781 finally came to a halt on the tarmac at Karachi International Airport. Inside the cabin, the air was thick with disbelief, relief, and gratitude. The passengers, numbering 408, had just survived the unimaginable. And at the center of it all was a 14-year-old boy, Ayan Malik, whose courage, composure, and extraordinary skill had made the impossible possible. From the moment he had stepped into the cockpit, Ayan had transformed from an ordinary teenager into a figure of calm authority. Alarms had screamed incessantly, warning lights had flashed furiously, and the plane had groaned under the strain of mechanical anomalies and turbulence. Yet through it all, his mind worked with the precision of a seasoned pilot, analyzing every gauge, reading every indicator, and making decisions that affected hundreds of lives in real time. The cabin crew, who had guided passengers and attempted to stabilize the chaos, now looked upon him with awe. He did it," one attendant whispered, tears streaming down her face. "A child, he saved all of us." Ayan sat in the captain's chair, his small hands still gripping the yoke. Sweat coated his brow, and his clothes clung uncomfortably, but the most overwhelming sensation was the gravity of what had just transpired. 408 people, each with families, hopes, and dreams, had survived because of him. Paramedics quickly moved to the cockpit to assess the pilots, both of whom were now stabilized. Doctors would later confirm that without Ayan's intervention, the situation would have ended in tragedy. The aircraft, a massive twin-engine commercial jet, had been brought safely from a perilous altitude to a precise landing despite engine fluctuations, turbulence, and a complete lack of active pilot guidance. News spread rapidly. Airports, airlines, governments, and media outlets hailed the boy as a hero. His story, unbelievable yet true, captivated the globe, a 14-year-old landing a commercial aircraft with 408 passengers aboard. Yet amidst accolades and attention, Aon remained remarkably grounded. "I just did what I had to do," he would say later, in interviews that reached millions. "I focused on the plane, on the instruments, and on keeping everyone safe. Fear is a luxury you can't afford when so many lives are at stake." Back in the cabin, the atmosphere was a mixture of jubilation and lingering shock. Families embraced, crying and whispering thanks to God. Strangers shared tears and hugs, united by the extraordinary experience they had survived together. Children, who had cried in fear earlier, now clung to their parents, eyes wide with wonder at the reality of what had just happened. Emergency crews who had lined the runway observed from a distance, witnessing the miraculous landing with a mixture of relief and astonishment. Firefighters, paramedics, and ground staff had prepared for disaster, and yet it had never come. Instead, they saw a teenager orchestrate survival with a clarity and bravery that defied imagination. The media frenzy began almost immediately. Live footage of the landing, interviews with shaken but grateful passengers, and statements from airline officials painted the scene. The boy who had taken control in a moment of unparalleled crisis, maintaining calm where panic would have been understandable, had brought the plane safely to the ground. Headlines around the world celebrated him as the boy pilot miracle, teenage hero of the skies, and 14-year-old saves 408 lives. Yet fame and recognition did not define Aon. For him, the landing was not about glory, it was about action. It was about focusing every ounce of knowledge, instinct, and courage to save lives. Years later, aviation experts would analyze the landing, praising his flawless execution, composure under pressure, and ability to perform critical maneuvers flawlessly despite his age and inexperience with actual flight conditions. Aon's life changed profoundly after that day. Invitations to speak at aviation events, awards ceremonies, and interviews flooded in. Governments and airline authorities honored him for his bravery. Schools and institutions shared his story as an example of courage, intelligence, and human potential. Yet he remained humble. "I just did what anyone would do in my place," he would often say. His personal journey into aviation continued. The experience strengthened his resolve to become a professional pilot. Hours spent on simulators, in classrooms, and in training now had deeper meaning. He understood firsthand what responsibility meant, and how the decisions of a single individual could ripple across hundreds of lives. Despite the acclaim, Aon never lost sight of the human element of that day. He remembered every passenger's face, the expressions of fear, hope, and eventual relief. He remembered the grip of a mother's hand on her child, the silent prayers of elderly passengers, and the gratitude etched on every face when the plane came to a safe stop. These images stayed with him, grounding him in the significance of the event far beyond the fame or awards. Over the years, he became a symbol of courage and hope. Aviation schools incorporated his story into curriculum to teach not only the technical aspects of flight but also the human aspects of crisis management, decision-making, and composure under pressure. Pilots, trainees, and even seasoned experts studied his actions to understand how extraordinary calm and precision could overcome even the most dire circumstances. The story also resonated with families worldwide. Letters poured in from passengers, relatives, and strangers expressing gratitude, awe, and inspiration. Each note reinforced the simple truth: an ordinary teenager had accomplished something extraordinary. As Aon grew, he continued to honor that day not as a moment of personal glory but as a testament to courage, preparation, and calm under pressure. He understood that heroism is not about age or size but about willingness to act, clarity of thought, and the courage to confront fear. Eventually, he became a licensed commercial pilot, achieving the dreams that had once seemed distant. Yet he never forgot that first flight, the day the sky entrusted him with hundreds of lives. The experience remained vivid, a constant reminder that courage, skill, and determination can defy even the most impossible odds. Years later, in interviews and speeches, he would reflect, "I was just a boy, but on that day, fear didn't matter. Knowledge, focus, and the will to act mattered. That is what saved 408 lives. The world remembered Aviation Malik not only as a hero but as a symbol of hope, bravery, and the extraordinary potential of the human spirit. His story transcended aviation. It became a lesson in resilience, courage, and the power of determination. The day Flight AQR 781 landed safely, the skies witnessed an unparalleled miracle. A teenager had faced the unimaginable and succeeded. 408 people had lived, and countless others were inspired. The event would be remembered forever, not only as a remarkable feat of aviation but as a testament to the human capacity for courage in the face of the impossible. Aviation Malik, 14 years old, had proven that age is no barrier to heroism, and that even in the darkest, highest stakes moments, courage, knowledge, and focus can save lives.